In a quiet neighborhood on the east side of Columbus, Ohio, the morning began long before the sun appeared. Monica Harris rose from her bed with the same soft determination she carried through every day. Her small home, still filled with memories of her late husband, felt peaceful in the early hours. The old coffee maker, tired from years of overuse, sputtered as if reluctant to help her start another long day. She waited patiently for the few warm drops it offered, cupping her hands around the mug as if holding on to something more than heat. Her young daughter, Lila, wandered out of her room, still half asleep. The child's presence brought a small light into the dim kitchen. Monica lifted her into her lap and breathed in the scent of her daughter's hair, that soft innocence that reminded her why she kept pushing forward despite everything. She knew her daughter needed her strength, even on the days her own bones felt too heavy. As Lila ate her simple breakfast, Monica prepared for work with familiar motions. She collected her cleaning tools, microfiber cloths, gloves, gentle cleaning solutions she made herself because they were cheaper and safer, and the small pouch where she kept a worn photograph of her late husband, Staff Sergeant Marcus Harris. His smile in that photo carried both pride and exhaustion, the expression of a man who had given everything to his country and had nothing left to give himself. 7 years had passed since the accident overseas that took him. Sometimes she still felt the knock on the door, still heard the trembling voice that had delivered the news. She had grieved while trying to hold her newborn child, learning in the same breath how to live without the man who had once been her entire world. The military paid what they could, but life costs more than benefits can cover. So she worked. Every day. Without complaint. She kissed her daughter goodbye, promising she would be home before bedtime. She hoped it would be true this time. The bus ride downtown was quiet and familiar. When she arrived at Weston and Meyer's corporate tower, she greeted the security guard who always treated her with kindness. His presence was one of the few gentle things she encountered in that polished glass world where she worked unseen. Inside the building, she moved through hallways where people rarely looked at her. Some acknowledged her presence with polite nods, but most treated her as a fixture of the building. Useful, necessary, but unseen. It wasn't new. It wasn't surprising. But some days, it still hurt to feel invisible. As she cleaned the break room, she overheard groups of employees laughing freely, unaware of the weight their words carried when they joked about people who worked those kinds of jobs. They joked about how they could never imagine waking up early just to clean someone else's mess, how they would rather quit life altogether than end up in her position. They spoke loudly, boldly, never considering whether she heard them. She kept her eyes down and her heart steady. She had learned that dignity did not depend on other people's opinions. When her work brought her to the rooftop terrace for lunch, she enjoyed the quiet, even if the wind was cold. From up there, she could see the city stretching endlessly, a mix of hope and heartbreak that mirrored her own life. She ate her simple sandwich and checked her phone. A teacher from her daughter's school had left a message to say that Lila had cried during reading time and missed her mother. The guilt settled on Monica's chest like a heavy stone. She promised herself again that she would make a better life for her daughter someday. Later that afternoon, she went to clean the 42nd floor. This was the executive level, a place untouched by most employees. It felt like a different world, luxury carpets, glass walls, and silence thick enough to feel expensive. She saved the CEO's office for last, as she always did on Thursdays. Inside, she found Alexander Weston hunched over his desk, typing rapidly, his face pale and tight with concentration. He barely noticed her. The room was pristine, yet full of a quiet tension. There was something fragile in the way he moved, something hidden beneath the sharp suit and powerful title. He seemed like a man carrying a mountain of responsibilities on his back. Rumors around the office said he pushed himself too hard, worked too many hours, and barely slept. Something about the way his fingers trembled as he typed reminded her too much of Marcus in his final year. That kind of exhaustion did not come from lack of rest alone, it came from living too long in survival mode. Every week, she observed him, quietly cleaning around him, seeing what others refused to notice. She could sense emotional pain the way someone once wounded can detect it in others. She had learned these signs the hardest way possible. She left the building that evening with a heavy heart. The memory of her husband's struggle lingered, mixing with the sight of the CEO's frail composure. She knew suffering when she saw it. And she had no idea her instinct was preparing her for something that would change everything. The next Tuesday, the building felt uneasy even before anything happened. Monica sensed it as soon as she stepped inside. The air felt too still, the energy too tight. She continued her tasks, trying to ignore the strange feeling forming at the base of her spine. Shortly before noon, the fire alarm erupted through the tower, piercing and shrill. Employees rushed into the hallways in confusion and mild annoyance. It was not a scheduled drill. People moved without urgency, assuming it was a malfunction or inconvenience, not understanding the seriousness behind the blaring alarm. Monica immediately guided people toward the stairwell, using her voice to bring order into panic. She had done this many times before, though most never thanked her or even remembered she helped. She searched each hallway to ensure no one was left behind. When she reached the 42nd floor, she found it eerily empty, the silence more disturbing than the alarms. She was about to leave when she heard a faint, unusual thud coming from the CEO's private suite. It didn't sound like something falling off a desk. It sounded like a body hitting the ground. Her heart pounded. She knocked firmly on the door, calling for the CEO, but there was no response. She knocked again, louder, fear rising sharply inside her. She remembered the emergency key kept at the small security desk nearby. Running on instinct, she raced to retrieve it. When she opened the door, she froze at the sight that waited for her. The CEO was collapsed on the floor, his face pale, his breathing shallow, his hand pressed weakly against his chest. Sweat dripped down his temple. He looked lost, terrified, and fragile. The sight pulled memories from the deepest part of her heart, the memories of her husband gasping for breath during his worst episodes, trying to hold on to life as something inside him slipped away. She dropped to her knees beside the CEO, every instinct sharpened by her past. She checked his breathing, observed the rapid pulse in his neck, saw the desperation in his unfocused eyes. Her mind worked quickly, drawing from the same training she learned while caring for Marcus. She called 911 with her voice trembling but steady enough to convey urgency. She explained the situation, identified the symptoms, and followed the dispatcher's instructions with precision. She found the CEO's medication nearby, similar to what Marcus once used, and administered it in a careful, practiced way. As she held him upright, she matched her breathing to his, guiding him step by step through the panic and the pain. She knew that the human voice, steady, calm, and present, could pull someone back from the edge of collapse. She whispered soft encouragement, more for his spirit than his ears. Minutes passed like hours until the paramedics arrived. They rushed into the room and saw the decisive actions she had taken. They recognized immediately that she had not only saved him but prevented a far worse outcome. One paramedic nodded with respect and told her she had done everything perfectly. But not everyone in the building shared that respect. As soon as the CEO was taken away, executives filled the office, their voices sharp and accusing. They questioned why she had been on that floor, why she had touched the CEO, why she had not waited for someone more qualified. They spoke with irritation, not gratitude, treating her actions as if they were an inconvenience rather than the reason their leader still had a pulse. Their harsh words fell on a woman who had already poured out every bit of strength she had. Her hands trembled, her throat burned with unspoken pain, and her heart felt crushed by the very people she had tried to help. Only the security guard defended her, shielding her from their cruelty. But the damage was already done. She left the building feeling ashamed, invisible again despite the life she had just saved. When she returned home that evening, she hugged her daughter tightly, holding her as if steadying her own spirit. She didn't need to share the details. Her daughter sensed the sadness in her silence and offered the simple comfort only a child's love can give. That night, Monica lay awake thinking of Marcus, the moments she couldn't save him, the moments she tried, the guilt she carried for years. Saving the CEO had reopened all those wounds. But she had acted because she could not bear to watch another life slip away the way her husband's had. Her pain had guided her hands, and her love had guided her heart. She slept without knowing that the world outside her home was about to tell a very different story than the executives had. The next morning, when Monica entered the corporate tower, she expected punishment, not praise. But the moment she stepped inside, she found herself surrounded by clusters of reporters, cameras, and employees all watching her as if she were someone important. Her heart raced with confusion. Someone pointed toward her, and in seconds, the crowd surged with questions. Cameras flashed like lightning. The building that once ignored her now seemed to revolve around her presence. She felt overwhelmed and frightened. But the security guard pulled her through the chaos, leading her into a quieter hallway. There, he showed her a video taken from the CEO's office camera, the footage of her saving his life. Millions had already seen it online. People across the city had begun praising her courage, calling her a hero, admiring her grace and compassion. Her knees felt weak as she watched herself on the screen. She had not expected recognition. She had not wanted fame. She had simply acted because she believed no one deserved to suffer alone. Before she could process anything, the elevator opened. The CEO stepped out, still recovering but determined. He approached her slowly, gratefulness in his eyes. Without hesitation, he asked her to accompany him to a meeting with the board of directors. Inside the boardroom, the highest-ranking leaders of the company waited, whispering among themselves until the CEO silenced them with his presence. He explained exactly what Monica had done, letting everyone hear the truth they had overlooked. He spoke not only of her actions but also of her character, her attentiveness, her heart, her quiet courage. He reminded them that while the executives evacuated, she had run toward danger, driven by instinct and compassion. He shared her experience with her late husband, revealing that her past pain had given her the knowledge that saved his life. He then announced that he intended to honor her actions in a meaningful way. He promoted her to a new role, Director of Employee Wellness and Safety. In this role, she would help ensure others received care, support, and understanding, especially in moments of crisis. He also offered to fund her full education if she chose to pursue nursing or counseling, recognizing the heart of service she carried. Monica was overwhelmed. For the first time in years, she felt seen for who she truly was, a capable, intelligent, resilient woman whose strength had been forged through love and loss. Later that day, during a press conference, the CEO publicly thanked her for saving his life. He spoke openly about how easily people overlooked those who worked behind the scenes and how wrong that mindset was. He told the world that the people who keep society standing are often those others refuse to notice. His message resonated far beyond the walls of the tower. When Monica returned home that evening, her daughter ran into her arms with excitement. The little girl said her classmates had told her that her mother was a hero. Monica's eyes filled with tears as she held her daughter, realizing that the recognition she had earned was not just for herself but for every unseen worker who had ever carried the world quietly on their shoulders. In the soft glow of sunset, as mother and daughter stood together on their porch, Monica finally felt a sense of peace spreading through her heart. Her life had changed not because she sought glory, but because she showed compassion when it mattered most. Her story became a reminder that real heroes are often found in the places people look at last. She understood then that her husband would have been proud. And for the first time in a long while, she felt free of the guilt she had carried. She had saved a life, not to erase her past pain, but to prove to herself that even broken hearts can do extraordinary things. And in that moment, she realized she had never been invisible. She had simply been waiting for the world to finally open its eyes.